So first off, yay, we got Chip, and we got Potemkin. I I wish you could have seen me react to both those, because I went from like the highest heights of seeing Chip and just trying to process all the information I'm seeing. What are the tools he's got? Oh, he's back. This is cool. And then realizing that highest height was actually me at the apex of a heavenly Potemkin buster, and I was about to be brought right back down to the fucking ground. Literally, they bring Potemkin out, and the first thing he does is fucking duff Chip with his 6H. It was painful for me to watch. Um, and yeah, so Chip, like, I like seeing that he's buff as hell. I think so. They changed Gamma Blade, so now it's like a Bunshin, and you can actually punch Gamma Blade, and Chip will take damage. That's kind of cool. They ditched his Wall Cling for a wall run, and it looks like there might be some neat stuff out of that. I'm glad to see his Shuriken getting useful, but Chip doesn't have teleport anymore. He doesn't have the thing which, like, to me was actually a really defining part of his identity, and it was part of what made him feel like a super powerful ninja, right? So like all these other characters in Guilty Gear have all these, in Xrd have all these super powerful tools that they can use to control screen space and do shit tons of damage. And the thing that set Chip apart for me from the rest of them was that Chip was able to have a teleport that is way faster than most teleports in fighting games, and he has a whole bunch of them, so he can go in different places, right? It made me feel really fast, and it made me feel really cool. And if Chip's teleport isn't in there because they don't think that it fits New Guilty Gear 2020, that's going to make me sad. Now, they did give him some Alpha Blade options, right? So now he can go in different directions out of Alpha Blade. He has more mobility from Alpha Blade than he used to, but not all mobility is the same, right? So he went from a tool like to tell you just how important teleport is to me. So with teleport, you get 4 different locations, right? You get punch, kick, slash, and hard slash. So you can teleport in place, you can teleport across the screen on the ground, he can teleport up and in front of you or up and behind you based on which button he's pressing. But then in addition to that, the S teleport, and I think that's it. Maybe the H teleport. The S teleport also carries his forward momentum. So if he runs at you and S teleports, he can actually get the S teleport to cross up a little bit, but it's pretty tricky, right? And then on top of that, you have the different attacks that you can do out of teleport to give you even more options, even more tools to play with. And then after all that, you have jump install, so you can use all his other air options, right? Air dash, double jump, triple jump, depending on how you do the jump install. There's all these different things that you can do with his teleports in order to generate a whole bunch of different outcomes, right? It's one of the most flexible mobility tools I've ever seen in any fighting game. Now, absolutely, there is a chance that this is incomplete, and they've said, hey, we're open, we're very open to community feedback, blah 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 blah. But my worry, and I think this is a worry that a lot of people had when looking at this, is that this is actually indicative of the approach that Arc System Works is taking with Guilty Gear 2020, right? And they warned us of as much, right? They said they were reinterpreting Guilty Gear, they're trying to build it from the ground up, that they weren't like super attached to specific systems or whatever. And so yeah, the hope is certainly that this move list is incomplete and that it's early or whatever. But again, like, everyone seems to be missing stuff, as well as the kind of high damage, right? Combos are smaller, and not just smaller in the like fewer hits sense, but also smaller in the like the kind of being able to make meaningful decisions or generate a bunch of different outcomes out of the combo system. They're doing it a lot of the ways that like wall break or the wall splat and wall break works, as well as losing air tech means these are systems that feel like they're basically designed to constrain the amount of mileage that you can get out of a combo and kind of the different decisions you can make in there. Overall, things look a bit slower. There's a lot more pushback on hit and on kind of various combo enders, even knockdowns. Like, it looks like just in general, your Oki opportunities are going to be much less oppressive. Instant block no longer changes frame data. In general, it looks like there's a lot less to think about and a lot less to worry about. And this is coming, of course, this is relative to Guilty Gear, right? So 2020 still, like, from what we've seen, looks like a like full featured fighter by anyone's standards, but we're not holding it by anyone's standards. We're kind of holding it to Guilty Gear's previous standards here. And obviously there's a lot of stuff in Xrd. There's a lot of stuff in Plus R. Now, when you have less to think about and less to worry about, this isn't necessarily a bad thing for a fighting game, right? The less system stuff there is and less character stuff that you have to think about, the more of your concentration you can focus on keeping track of your opponent. And that enables a lot of really interesting conversational moments, right? But to me, the thing that has always defined Guilty Gear is its complexity, right? So they're just the sheer number of things that can happen due to movement and momentum conservation, due to these really complicated attack interactions, due to systems like IB and FD and Blitz and Dead Angle and YRC and all this other stuff, right? Every time I go to an event, I see at least one thing I've never seen before, right? And because everything is happening so fast, and with such complicated inputs, it feels like at any moment, something can go wrong or unexpected, something that neither player knows exactly what's going to happen. And so they both have to adjust on the fly, right? To me, that's super cool. Now, I don't love complexity for its own sake. I don't think that just games that are more complicated are more valuable, right? If I can play Street Fighter. It's that I love what the complexity does to the human brain, right? It makes me feel good, right? As I get more and more comfortable processing this thing that used to be super noisy and just all this information, all this sheer volume of data coming through my eyeballs trying to process what's happening in Guilty Gear in any given 30 frames, right? As I get better and better at processing that, I feel like I'm stronger and I feel like I'm smarter, right? And that feeling is so good for me that it motivates me to sink more time and grow and get even stronger still, right? It is the complexity that means that I can feel myself getting a little bit stronger every day, right? Because every day I see something new or I try something different, I learn something new that I hadn't ever done before because there's just so much in that game. And to me, that complexity is the game's way of respecting my time, right? More than simple games do. It does a lot to make me feel like my time spent is worth it. I was talking about this with Irene, and the analogy that kind of landed for me was like, it's kind of like getting rid of grinding in a JRPG, right? Where like if you're playing a JRPG, you probably love grinding by now. There's something about it that is just that just soothes your soul or whatever. It's part of the game. It doesn't mean you want to do it all the time, but you probably actually like something about it. Now that grinding is also probably what's keeping other people out of the game, right? So that's the thing with Gear. The cost of Gear's complexity is that a lot of people are intimidated from playing it because they know they're gonna have to spend a lot of time catching up. And trust me, like I have also been one of those people catching up. So I started with XX and I played like off and on, kind of interwoven with other fighting games whenever I could find someone to play Guilty Gear with. So I went hard on XX for a little while and then I moved and I couldn't find anyone to play with. So I played other games. Then a new game would come out and I'd try and play it, blah, 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 blah. But I kind of just got back hard into Guilty Gear with Rev 2. And I've been doing that catch up, and I know that catching up can feel rough, right? When you're playing with people who have, in some cases, several years of a lead on you, it's not always easy to feel like you're making progress, because no matter how hard you work, you might still not be beating those people who have been playing since day one of whatever, right? And if that's how it felt for me, like it's even worse for people for whom Guilty Gear was their first fighting game, right? So there is a cost to complexity, right? But there's actually another cost to complexity, and that's the neutral, right? So Guilty Gear puts a lot of complexity in its character's attack design, right? They give you a lot of crazy shit that you can do to an opponent. Once you got them pinned down, as long as they're blocking something, oh, good, you get to unleash whatever the hell you want on them, right? It's not quite Marvel bad, but it gets pretty close, right? And on defense, you have to do a lot of work, right? So both players have this really like conversational potential on offense and defense in Xrd and in Plus R and whatever. But if one player is a little bit deficient, if there's a gap between one player's ability to defend the other player's attacks in any given match, then what happens is the neutral is usually the thing that suffers, right? I actually wrote about this a little bit ago. It's an essay on going from footsies to neutral. Definitely check it out. Post the link in chat. But here's the thing, right? Guilty Gear has a lot of great neutral that you might not get a chance to learn to play until you have basically until you've leveled up your defense and your opponent has leveled up their offense enough that you return to neutral on the regular, right? And this is huge for me. Like, something I've been noticing is that my biggest gains over the last couple months of the player have been in neutral, and it's from learning how other characters play, right? So because offense and defense are so powerful in current Xrd, right? You often don't get to see, or you don't necessarily get to play with a whole lot of the great neutral that's actually in the current game. You know, the way that lots of people describe Guilty Gear is like, oh, I have my bullshit and you have your bullshit, and we're just fighting to see who can start each other's bullshit. And that's how Guilty Gear feels until you get good enough at stopping the other person's bullshit that you don't just lose to one knockdown, right? And then that's when you get to play neutral. So if Guilty Gear 2020 ends up focusing on neutral and building around neutral, it could be a fantastic fighting game, and it could feel nothing like its predecessors, right? It could be a really good fighting game. Maybe like Smash actually is a game that's like 90% neutral, right? Guilty Gear could have, like 2020 could have neutral that's as good as Smash or as any other like highly mobile fighter, right? And that would feel nothing like previous Guilty Gears, and it also wouldn't necessarily get at the complexity that I really enjoy. So here's the deal, right? This is the take, right? For me, Guilty Gear has always been a great second fighting game, right? It's the game that I recommend people pick up, usually after they've learned how to play Street Fighter, right? Or another fighting game, Sam Show, Mortal Kombat, whatever. Because like you get a chance to learn kind of the basics, right? You get to learn how fighting games work and the rules of fighting games. And then once you've kind of internalized a lot of that stuff, and once you've had a chance to practice that stuff, that's when you graduate to the big boys, right? And you learn Guilty Gear, which just is this like basically this like living library of 2D fighting game mechanics. And I fucking love it for that, right? The other way to describe Guilty Gear is it's the retirement home for people who love 2D fighting games. So Guilty Gear I think has always been a great second fighting game for me. But the thing is that it's not just about me, right? So there are lots of things that people love about Guilty Gear besides the complexity. People love the characters. They're super expressive and cool and unique. People love the animation. It's just amazing and fluid. The soundtrack fucking slaps. Though XX is a lot better than Xrd. I will hold on to that till the day I die. There's so much to love in Guilty Gear. I've been into what Guilty Gear has been for the last 16 years or so, right? Because I came on with X and XX. But if rebooting Guilty Gear, if kind of making it a less complicated game, ends up losing me to grab a new generation of players, I'm happy for them. I will be sad, right? I will be sad because I could have had the chance to see something that like the continuation of something that I loved. Doesn't mean I would have to stop playing Plus R or stop playing, Xrd or whatever. I've actually been meaning to dig more into Plus R. But if that's what the creators of Guilty Gear end up doing with it, I will be sad, but I'll be happy for the people who love it, right? Now, that said, we know that the game's in a really early state and that they've promised to listen to the community, okay? I would assume that anyone who knows fighting games, and especially the studio who made Guilty Gear is like the most 2D fighting game of 2D fighting games, I would expect they know the kind of reaction that they're getting from showing this off, right? Now, the response around the netcode question, if you saw that in the stream, generally not that encouraging, but I feel like the way that they're handling their reveals, how they're carefully setting expectations about how they're approaching the new game right after the Evo announcement, we got all excited, and then Daisuke sends a letter saying, okay, but like, you're going to want to see this because it's different, right? The fact that they ran that Q&A session in their promo stream, it seems like they're willing to listen to what the community thinks, right? Their opinions and what we've seen so far. That's presumably why they're showing us this stuff. So I'd say give Arxis a chance to be responsive to the community feedback, right? If you like what you saw, please tell them that, because I'm sure they'll be relieved, right? No dev wants to go out there and be like, here's this thing that probably isn't the thing that you fell in love with. Check it out, right? Like, it's a hard pill to swallow, and it's hard when that's your job. So if you like what they're doing, tell them that. And if you just like parts of what they're doing, tell them that too, right? I think that potentially the changes around Roman cancel could be really big and really cool. And I'm impressed to see how they keep on streamlining that mechanic, right? If you don't like what you're seeing, let them know that too. But please do not be demanding, do not be entitled, do not be pejorative, dismissive, do not be cruel or contemptuous. People are all those things quite often to game developers on the internet. And I'm telling you, y'all, they don't need that shit. So please be nice, right? Remember that the devs have spent more time with the game than we have, and trust that they'll do what they think is right for Guilty Gear. But don't assume that you're included in that vision unless you tell them that you want to be, right? Like, they will do what's best for Guilty Gear, but that might not have you in it, right? And at the end of the day, my $60 is worth the same to them as all of your $60, right? So I would, like, if it turns out that the play they're making ends up capturing a new audience and costs me something, like, I can't honestly say that that's the bad idea, even if it's one that I'm not personally fond of, right? Yeah. So that's the take, right? Like, we gotta wait and see. We definitely got to get our hands on it ourselves. And we have to be straightforward and honest in our feedback, but in a way that's also compassionate and cognizant of the fact that there are real people there, right? The thing is that right now, what we see mostly is just the feeling of having lost a bunch of stuff, right? Because all these systems and all these potential mechanics that we haven't even really got our hands on with, like in the news one, we don't necessarily, we don't see the stuff that we've worked so hard on being reflected in the new one. And that, I think to feel disappointed is perfectly normal. I get it, right? But we also, like, fighting games are complicated. And sometimes when you take some shit out, that gives you room to get more good, cool shit in there, right? Even if you don't add anything. The thing about fighting games is that they give us way too much for our brains to comfortably parse on time, all at once, and in entirety, right? So as you remove stuff from a fighting game, you give people's brains more bandwidth to work on other shit. And sometimes that other shit is actually way more useful, right? Or way better for the experience, or it's something new. And that's fucking awesome, right? So I think, and I would hope that there's still room for this, right? And the other thing to remember is that, like, every new fighting game sucks until the third version, right? Y'all talking good about Xrd? Think about how you felt when Sign came out and you had to deal with Elfeld, right? So yeah, I think fighting games are complicated. It's like some crazy ass alchemy shit when it comes to thinking about all the different things you can throw in there to try and create a certain kind of experience in the player's brains, right? And where we go from here, right, is Arx is going to keep on making that game, and we got to keep telling him what it's doing for us and what it's not doing for us. And so that's kind of what's up on GG2020, right? I remain cautiously optimistic, but part of the reason I get to be cautiously optimistic is because I know that there's way more fighting games out there than I have time to play. And so that kind of gets me to the last part of this video, this rant, if you will. And it's less about 2020 and more about me. So here's the thing. 2020 does not need to be Rev 3. It doesn't need to be Accent Core ++R. I want it to be new, and I want it to be good. And I hope that it does so from learning from Xrd and XX and all the other games they've been making. If I like 2020, I'll play it. I will keep playing Xrd too. I've also been meaning to go deeper into +R, so maybe we'll get some +R streams, you know? The thing is that y'all know me as the play Guilty Gear guy, because for the last year or so, I've mostly been telling people to play Guilty Gear. I actually so the essay I wrote, TLDR Play Guilty Gear, came out the end of November last year. So we've been riding hard for the Guilty Gear train for, you know, a year and change on the internet, right? But if you met me before that, I would have probably been talking about the Spirit of Marvel. Or I would have been writing a book about playing Ryu. I would have been singing the praises of XX or CVS2, right? Fucking, can you imagine me telling you to play CVS2? I call that game fucking the Grateful Dead of fighting games, because if you were there, it was magic. And if you weren't there, it just is loud and goes on for way too long, right? Now, I recommend Guilty Gear to people because out of all the fighting games out there, it's the one that gives me what I want most out of a fighting game. And what I want is the feeling of playing a virtual martial art, right? As long as that's what I want out of fighting games, and as long as Guilty Gear does that the best, I'm going to be playing Guilty Gear, right? But this is a promise to you, and it's a promise to me. I am too old, and my taste is too fucking good to settle for playing a game that isn't worth my time. Damn, I almost said that with a straight face. So I'm going to be giving 2020 a fair shake. Hell yeah, Kanta 2. We're going to get some Kanta 2 in there. Fuck it, let's go. I'm going to give 2020 a fair shake. I'm looking forward to seeing how it ends up and what it delivers. Like I said, remember, a new fighting game isn't good until the third version anyway. And honestly, I think fighting games are beautiful in so many different ways that I would be a fucking dumbass if I didn't think that whatever's coming next wasn't going to be worthwhile, even if it's not the same. But you can be goddamn sure that whatever you see me playing on stream or off, I'm playing because I think it's worthwhile. I'm not shilling stuff that I don't believe in. I'm not going to give up on something early. Okay? So let's sit down and let's play some motherfucking Guilty Gear 2019 while we wait for that 2020. So today I'm going to be playing Chip. Actually, for the next 2 weeks, I'm back to Chip, baby, because I got to prep for Arc Revo. I got to make sure, like I said, making sure no one in SoCal gets close to that last chance qualifier. So none of this L-Felt shit. We're going to play some motherfucking Guilty Gear, all right? And for today, we'll see how long I can keep this up. But for today, I'm going to be playing Chip in GG2020 mode. So I'm not using teleport and neutral. I'm not doing any tricky okie. We're going to see how this fucking goes. Y'all want some wins on my Chip? Now's the fucking day, y'all. I'm going to open up that lobby. We're going to get in there.